Hi everyone, welcome to our virtual monthly meeting. We're so happy that you could join us and I hope you enjoy it. So let's get started. First I'm going to go and just show you a little bit of my backyard. Where I spend my time these days. So stay tuned. Hello dear friends, Master Gardeners and 2020 interns. We are existing in unprecedented times in which we are trying new technologies to provide you this virtual monthly meeting. You will receive one continuing education credit. Please stay safe and healthy. First, best wishes to Stephen Hopkins, our horticulture agent and Master Gardener program coordinator, on his retirement. His last working day is May 15th. If you would like to send him an email or card, you will find his address and email on VMS. Thank you, Stephen, for such a long and exemplary career. We wish you had a real cake to show our gratitude, but we only give you a virtual one. Happy retirement. The Extension office at the Brinker Building will be closed through April 30th. There will be no help desk or any support staff available during this time. Stephen is working at home as an employee of Texas A&M AgriLife Extension. All Master Gardener school gardens and community garden activities are canceled according to the orders of Judge Jenkins to shelter in place. Please be safe and take responsibility for yourself and others. As indicated in a VMS announcement, the Board of Directors has canceled the Spring Garden Tour and any association activities and events through May 10th. The COVID-19 pandemic has rapidly evolved into the most serious infectious health risk in living memory. In support of the CDC's recommendations to cancel events of 50 people or more for the next 8 weeks, the board has made the difficult decision to cancel the Spring Garden Tour scheduled for May 2nd and 3rd, and all other face-to-face meetings and activities, regardless of size, through May 10th. As Judge Clay Jenkins noted, it is imperative that the public do their part. By taking strong measures now, we increase the likelihood of not overwhelming our healthcare system. We must act responsibly and proactively to protect the well-being of our fellow Master Gardeners, garden owners, and guests. Please know that we are committed to rescheduling the garden tour once the present uncertainty of COVID-19 is behind us. We are hoping that by July 1, we can go forward with deciding on a reschedule date. The board continues to monitor this constantly changing situation by following the latest information from Dallas County Health and Human Services, the Texas Department of State Health Services, and the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, and adhering to their advice. For now, it is imperative that we support the advice of experts, adhere to guidelines established by the CDC, and take special care to keep our families and communities safe and healthy. Our virtual meeting platform will be Google Suites and Zoom. More information to come on Google Suites. If you would like to have a Zoom meeting, please contact Sandra Ferris for the setup. In compliance with COVID-19 guidelines, the 2020 Master Gardener School continued their remaining classes using Zoom, completing their coursework on April 6th, and a final exam was completed at home by April 13th. Good luck, Master Gardener class of 2020, for this coming year. You know we are behind you. We are also providing you a link to the Capel Community Gardens article, which informs us of providing food to area food pantries. And now for COVID-19 precautions. Please choose health. There is currently no vaccine to prevent coronavirus disease. The best way to prevent illness is to avoid being exposed to this virus by staying at home. Between people who are in close contact with one another within about 6 feet, through respiratory droplets produced when an infected person coughs or sneezes. Wash your hands often with soap and water for at least 20 seconds. I sing happy birthday. You can choose your own song. When soap and water are not available, use hand sanitizer that contains at least 70% alcohol. Avoid touching your face. Stay home if you are sick. Cover your coughs and sneezes. Clean and disinfect frequently touched spaces daily. Reach out to your neighbors who may need your help. Always thank our frontline health workers, first responders, grocery store employees, restaurants who provide food, pharmacists, truck drivers, farmers. There are so many people who keep us safe and fed. The newest guidelines, everyone should wear a cloth face cover when going out in public, for example, to the grocery store or to pick up other necessities. Cloth face coverings should not be placed on your children under age 2, anyone who has trouble breathing or is unconscious, incapacitated, or otherwise unable to remove the mask without assistance. The cloth face cover is meant to protect other people in case you are infected. Do not use a face mask meant for a healthcare worker. Follow the guidance of our county officials by sheltering in place to slow down the rate of infections and avoid overwhelming the healthcare system. And now for shout-outs. We cannot adequately express our gratitude to the dedicated garden tour co-chairs, Nancy Black and Julie Garza. Their team of extraordinarily gifted volunteers and the selfless garden owners who have worked tirelessly to meticulously choreograph this event down to the most minute detail. We look forward in determining a rescheduled date after July 1st. And to the Board of Directors, I want to thank the Board of Directors who have supported the actions taken recently. It is heartbreaking what has happened in our county, country, and the world. We need to do our part. The board has moved forward to ensure the safety of our master gardeners and the public. We had our first virtual meeting on April 14th. And to all master gardeners, we will get through this together. A team means together, everyone achieves more. We want to thank you for staying positive and willing to demonstrate the importance of our mission to extend horticulture education no matter the difficult times. And now for our project spotlight, Ruby Young Elementary School. In 1992, Patty Wallace was the mother of first grade student at Ruby Young when she started a garden with 6 raised beds and a lovely arbor built by her husband and other fathers at the school. After joining the school as a teacher, Patty became the catalyst for growing and maintaining the garden and she has been instrumental in designing and developing the garden areas ever since. With the help of school parents who work on Saturdays to maintain it, the garden now has 15 raised beds, plus a butterfly garden, a greenhouse, a fruit tree orchard, a pond, a teaching pavilion, and an outdoor music area. Garden expansion was facilitated 7 years ago when Ruby Young Elementary became an environmental and science magnet school. Dallas County Master Gardeners became active at the Ruby Young Garden 6 years ago, and a generous grant allowed Patty to add more raised beds, purchase a large greenhouse, and attend specialized training. Most recently, Patty got support from the Elks Club to further expand the garden by planting a grove of shade trees in an area covering more than an acre. This area, with lots of room for planting and activities, will offer students a respite from the heat when they are working outside. As the school's science specialist, Patty teaches students in kindergarten through 3rd grade twice a month and 4th and 5th grade students once a month. She also hosts a garden club for students every Tuesday and Thursday as part of an after-school program. These students weed, dig, plant, and harvest, and they have even sold their harvests in the carpool pickup line. Patty rotates groups of students through the garden club every 9 weeks to ensure students get the opportunity to participate in the different aspects of the garden club. Thank you, Patty, and all Master Gardener volunteers for this outstanding project and educating our future, who will take care of our world. And now we want to offer you some online resources in which you can continue to learn. Follow the Dallas Garden Buzz blog from our RED garden team at Raincatcher's Garden of Midway Hills. You have the link. Also, Aggie Horticulture, where you can find earthkind training online. Texas A&M Gardens. See a visit of the Leach Teaching Gardens at Texas A&M in College Station. Also, follow Texas A&M AgriLife Dallas Center, Water University, and on their YouTube channel. Search and subscribe to the Master Gardener YouTube channels across Texas. Please subscribe to the Dallas County Master Gardener Association YouTube channel. And now for your virtual hug. To all Master Gardeners, we hope to see you soon. Now for our presentation. Janet D. Smith is a Master Gardener and Master Naturalist. We welcome Janet on our presentation, Year-Round Color and Native Plants. Enjoy!
Hello and welcome. I'm Janet D. Smith, a Certified Master Gardener of the Dallas County. As you know, Master Gardeners are the volunteer arm of the Texas A&M AgriLife Extension, and we have been well trained to educate the public regarding good horticultural practices. And I hope you'll agree that this program today does that. I'm going to talk about year-round blooms with native perennials. So, a quick review of native plants. They've been here for thousands of years, grown in this area with no help from humans. Many of them use very little or no supplemental water once established. There is no mowing, edging, or raking. No fertilizers, no insecticides, and they provide food for native insects, birds, and critters. I have a lot of natives in both my own yard and at the project that I oversee at the Bathhouse Cultural Center at White Rock Lake, and we don't use any chemicals except for fire ants, and everything grows great. I just want to go over the lifespan of plants real quickly. Annuals, you know, only grow one season, so they're the ones that you're taking out and replacing with new ones. So you have some for winter, like your pansies and kale, and you have your spring ones, maybe petunias. There's more in the summer and more in the fall. So it's constantly planting. Biannuals are ones that will grow for 2 seasons, but they might not bloom the first season, only in the second season. And perennials, my favorites, are the ones that grow for more than 2 years. That for 2 years or more. It might be 2 or 3 years, or it might be our lifetime. We all know of plants somewhere that have been around longer than we have, and those are my favorites. So throughout the program, the rest of the program is going to be highlighting different plants, and I'm using abbreviations at the top of each slide. And that was just my cat adding her opinion about this. Um, for S means sun, which means at least 6 hours a day of direct sun. PS is part sun or part shade, 2 to 6 hours of sun or lightly shaded all day. Shade is less than 2 hours of sun. So then we have the water. VLW is very little water, rainwater only. Low water is every 3 to 4 weeks if no rain. And medium water is every 2 to 3 weeks if there's no rain. And of course, if it rains, then you reset your clock, so to speak. And the bottom one is about how long this plant has leaves. So if it's E, it's evergreen. SE is semi-evergreen, which means it drops some leaves. And D is deciduous. It drops all its leaves in the fall. So the first plant I want to talk about is four-nerve daisies. And I've kind of got these plants arranged by the calendar. So this is one of the earliest bloomers. Some years it blooms every month. It's one that blooms more in the cool weather than in the hot weather, but I do have flowers from this practically year round, and I have seen it blooming in the snow. So this is sun to part shade, very low water, and it's evergreen. I originally planted it at each end of my front yard, which I refer to as my berm, and it leaped over here into my parkway, which is composed of decomposed granite on top of landscape cloth, with the idea that nothing would grow in it, but weeds did grow. So when these started jumping over, I was thrilled because they hid the weeds, and now there's fewer and fewer weeds because there's more and more of these four-nerve daisies. The bees and the butterflies love them. This plant is great in rock gardens, and obviously it can spread. It has not spread in my backyard. It has not spread over at the bathhouse garden. So I don't know if it would spread for anyone else, but it's a plant that I never do anything nice for. I do when I'm bored, I will deadhead it. But like I say, I've never watered it. There has been no supplements to this non-soil of decomposed granite. So this is a tough love plant for sure. Here you can see it up close. It has a kind of clump grass foliage with these yellow daisies prolifically blooming out of it. They do end up kind of being like airplane plants that many of you will remember from the 70s or not. in that they'll have the mother and then there'll be little babies attached. So if you think you're digging up one, you might be digging up four, which is a good thing. Another one of the very early blooming plants is Garita. Again, sun to part sun, very low water, evergreen. It can get up to 6 feet tall and wide, and it blooms in February and March. It gets red berries in May through July that the wildlife likes, or you can make jelly out of them. I've actually never grown this plant because it has very sharp leaves, so it can reach out and stab you. If you have an area of your house that you want to prevent anyone from getting into that area, or maybe you live on a corner and people have taken to cutting across your lawn and leaving a path, this would be a good one to put in as a deterrent because you're only going to get stabbed once before you realize you want to avoid this plant. Texas Betony, it's another one of my favorites. It's sun to part shade, low water, evergreen. I've also seen it growing in full shade recently. It gets about a foot tall and 2 feet wide. The foliage is kind of mounding, and then the red flower spikes come out of it. It blooms on and off from March through November usually, and again, it's a better bloomer in the cool weather than in the summer. It almost goes dormant in the summer. But I love it because the hummingbirds love it. And when they start coming through in mid-March, this plant is usually blooming and I get to see the hummingbirds on it. Like most plants, you can trim it, shear it to encourage more blooms and fullness. Mexican plum. This is a nice tree. It's sun to part shade, low water, deciduous. It blooms in the early spring, usually March, and it will be a buzz, literally, with bees. It's a great pollinator plant for the early spring. It gets up to 35 feet tall and 20 feet wide. The bees and the butterflies love it, as I mentioned, and it has edible fruit. But you have to watch out, it does need good drainage, so don't plant it in our native clay. Usually you don't want to improve the soil in the immediate area where you're going to plant a tree, but this one you do want to provide good drainage. Crossvine. It's a great early spring vine, sun to part shade, low water, evergreen, can get up to 30 feet long. The hummingbirds love this one too. You can prune it annually to direct and control its growth, and be aware it does attach itself to the wall or the fence. So if you don't want it growing up one of those devices, you don't want it growing onto your garage or your house or your fence, this wouldn't be the correct plant for you. Carolina Jessamine, on the other hand, is also an early spring blooming vine, but it's a twining vine. So you'd want to put an arbor for this one, and it'll latch itself onto the arbor rather than what's behind it. It's part sun, medium water, and evergreen. And it only grows to 20 feet, so 10 feet less than the crossvine. Hummingbirds love it, and it's very fragrant. Blackfoot daisies. This is another one of those, don't be kind to it or you'll kill it. It's a tough love plant, sun to part shade, very low water, like never water it, and it's semi-evergreen. It's about a foot tall to 2 to 3 feet, and it makes a nice round circular mound. Bees and butterflies like it. It's great for rock gardens. This is one that when you plant it, you can water it in and don't ever water it again. And like the 4 nerve daisies in my first plant slide, this one has also jumped across the sidewalk and is growing in the parkway. It's a perennial, maybe it's short-lived. I usually plant several, and every year I have to replace one. I don't think it's the same one every year that dies, but among that grouping, I'm usually buying a new one. But I love the bloom. It blooms from March on to the freeze, so it's a great spot of color in your garden. Autumn sage. Boy, I think this is one of those misnamed plants. It ought to be practically all year round sage. I have lost count of how many of these that I have at home and in the bathhouse garden. It's full sun, low water, evergreen, can get up to 2 feet, 2 to 4 feet by 2 to 4 feet, so it can get quite large. The bees, the butterflies, and the hummingbirds love it. And as you probably know, it comes in a variety of colors. Some are natives, some are hybrids. But I have witnessed that ones like hot lips that are hybridized, those are still great pollinator plants. And cut it back in the winter. I often cut mine at home all the way down to the ground because they tend to get leggy and I prefer them more compact. Sundrops. This used to be the yellow highlight in my spring garden, but we know what happened when the 4 nerve daisies took over. So this is sun to part sun, very low water, and it's evergreen. It has kind of a asparagus fern type foliage, and it's kind of prickly. I don't like dealing with it except with gloves on, but you don't have to do much to it, so it's not a big deal. It blooms on and off April through November. I find that it has the big bloom in the spring that lasts maybe through June, and then it's sporadic and many fewer blooms after that. But the bees and the butterflies like it. It's great in rock gardens. Another low care plant that, if it's not surrounded by other yellow flowers, makes a great circle of yellow. Eve's necklace is another tree with a beautiful floral display in the spring. It needs part sun, so it could be an understory tree, very little water, and it is deciduous. It blooms in the spring and it attracts bees and butterflies. It has these black seed pods, as you can see, especially on the lower right-hand side of the picture. Those look like beads on a necklace, and that's how it got its name. But those are also poisonous. So don't eat them. Don't let your kids or grandkids eat them, and keep your pets away from them. But it is a beautiful tree that makes a lovely floral display in the spring. Red yucca. It's not a yucca and it's not red. So another weird name for a plant. Um, I think of this as the new earthkind roses because you see them everywhere and they're almost to the point of being overplanted. But they are the perfect plant. I mean, they don't need any maintenance. They just keep on trucking year after year. They're sun to part sun, very low water. I never water mine. And they're evergreen. Give a nice texture to your winter garden. Um, Says I can get 4x4. I think I've got one that's bigger than that. But, you know, they do grow. They are pretty large. And in a small area, if you've got a 0 lot line, you probably don't want this yucca. But you might want a brake light yucca, which is a hybrid, which is much smaller than this. And it is actually got bright red bloom stalks and flowers. The bees, the butterflies, and the hummingbirds love this. It's got great seeds in the winter for the birds. Um, the only maintenance I do on mine is I cut the old bloom stalks at the base just because I think the plant looks prettier without them. You know, I cut them in the February cutback. If you're not too fond of the red, it also comes in yellow, and that can be very beautiful. Here you can see it. This is in my yard against my house, and it really shows off with a dark background. And it still attracts the hummingbirds and bees and butterflies. Great pollinator plant. Texas kidney wood. This is a shrub slash tree. Gets up to 12 feet tall, 8 feet wide. It's a see-through plant. It doesn't have dense foliage, as you can see. It's kind of like a fern, and you can see through it, and it doesn't cast a lot of shade. It attracts bees and butterflies, and the foliage smells like citrus. On these fragrances, I have to admit, I lost my sense of smell for my 60th birthday, so I rely on what other people or what I can read about these plants, about their aromas. Texas sage, another plant we see a lot, and why not? It's a great flower shrub. It's sun, low water, evergreen. And when I say sun, I mean full sun for this one. Note it doesn't say part sun or part shade because it gets really leggy if it's not in sun because it wants sun. Um, the blooms occur only when there's a change in the barometric pressure, so there is nothing we can do to make it bloom. And I've had a case where the one in my front yard might be blooming and the one in the backyard isn't. Or at the bathhouse garden, which isn't a really large garden, but we might have them on the south side of the garden blooming and not on the north side. So it is very sensitive to the barometric pressure. Attracts bees and butterflies. And when this is in bloom, I see native bees on it all the time. And the ones I see are bumblebees and carpenter bees. And you know, those both are the big bees. The bumblebees are furry and the carpenter bees are shiny, but they love this plant and they've been pollinating it forever. It also comes with a green foliage, which to me makes the plant look entirely different than this grayish. But if you do plant one, please let it grow naturally. You can contain the size of it because it will get big even if it's the compact kind. But please don't grow it into a hedge like I have seen it done on commercial properties. Desert willow. God, just a gorgeous flower. Looks like an orchid, doesn't it? These are sun to part shade, low water, deciduous. Can get up to 36 feet tall and 25 wide. Blooms in the spring and the summer. It's aromatic and attracts bees and butterflies. You know, what's not to love? We also discovered at the bathhouse that this can survive floods as it has been covered up to 4 feet of water when White Rock floods with the big rainstorms, and it still comes back fine. I have one in a pot in my backyard, and the pot quit draining, and so it's standing in water, and it still does fine. But you don't need to water it. It's a desert willow. There's a reason it's called desert, and they're gorgeous trees. Sexmania. This might be one that you're not familiar with. It's another yellow daisy type flower. Sun to part shade, low water, semi-evergreen. Gets up to 2 feet tall by 4 feet wide. attracts bees and butterflies. It spreads easily by seed. In my yard, it spread prolifically. And I finally took it out because it was taking over too much of the garden. I guess I have this thing where yellow plants like to take over in my yard. So I took it out, but we've had it at the bathhouse for 12 years now, and it has stayed where we put it. So I don't know if it usually spreads or not. It's 50-50 in my experience. But it's a nice, another all summer blooming plant. Passion vine. If you've heard some of my other talks, you know I love this plant. And it's sun to part shade, low water, semi-evergreen. It can vine to 25 feet, blooms April through October. Bees love it, and there is actually a special passion vine bee that is the one that pollinates this. And aside from these spectacular flowers, the reason I love it is because it's baby food for butterflies. And the gold fritillary, oops, well, here we see very efficient pollination, and if you want to know all about it, you need to listen to my Sex in the Garden talk. And here we have the gold fritillary butterfly on the left is laying an egg on one of the new tendrils of the vine. And when butterflies lay their eggs on the plant that is specific to their species, they like to lay the eggs on the most tender part of the plant because these eggs are about the size of a grain of sea salt. And when the caterpillar hatches out, it's like eyelash size, and it needs something very tender to eat on. And so that's why they're laying on the newest growth of any plant. And here you see her, as I said, in this, what I call the C position of the abdomen, and she's laying the egg. Here's what the caterpillar looks like. And although it looks really scary, if you pet it, which I don't recommend, but I couldn't resist, it's really soft. Those spikes are soft. They're not going to hurt anybody. It's more of a visual warning to predators than an actual warning. Texas lantana. We all know lantana. There's many different kinds of lantana, but the native is the orange and yellow one, the urticoides, and it's a great pollinator plant, as most of them are, although in the lantanas, the creeping lavender lantana is known not to provide food for pollinators. So keep that in mind. This is full sun, very low water, deciduous. I always cut it back to the ground. Can grow to 6 feet by 6 feet. And it blooms May through frost. Prolific bloomer. This one has berries, so I don't cut it back when all the leaves have died. I cut it back after all the seeds, the berries are gone, because the birds will eat them. Bee balm, also known as Monarda. Most plants aren't known by their Latin name, but this one is. So it's sun to part shade, medium water, so a little more than the others, and it's deciduous. Can get up to 6 feet tall and 3 feet wide. Attracts bees and butterflies and birds, and it has medicinal properties for bees. It has thymol, which is a chemical that is a remedy for varroa mites, which is one of the big problems with the 40% death rate of European honeybees. So whereas we usually think of a balm as something that's going to help us, in this case, it's helping the bees. Mealy blue sage. What can I say about the sages? They, as a group of plants, the salvias are fantastic for our area, and they are wonderful pollinator plants. The one I chose to talk about is the Salvia farinaceae Henry Dulberg. It was named for the person's tombstone that it was growing next to. And next to Henry was his wife Augusta, and on her side there were white mealy cup sage, and those are called Augusta Dulberg. So like most Latin names often are named for the person that first discovered them, these are named for the people whose tombstones they were found near. So it gets 3 to 4 feet tall, and it's prolific. I find it spreading all over the bathhouse garden, and it seems, in our case at least, that Augusta took over Henry's place. She must have worn the pants in the family, and she evicted him because beds that started out as blue with maybe one white now are all white. But they're all equally good for the pollinators. You can deadhead them to keep them blooming like most plants. And it says cut back to 6 inches. We really cut it down to ground level. And it comes back prolifically the next year, already blooming. And it's always covered in bees and butterflies. Angell Trumpet. This is an annual, and I know this talk is about perennials, but it normally reseeds. And in some cases, it does come back on its own stem. And in some cases, it doesn't come back at all. We've had this at the bathhouse for 11 years, and now it's disappeared. And last year, they all kept dying, and now none came up this year yet. We're still hoping. It's sun to part shade, medium water. It dies back in the fall. It can get up to 6 feet tall, and it blooms May through November. And it's a night bloomer. And the first time I saw it and saw this flower open, it was at dusk, and it was at the home of Michael Parkey, who is a very well-known and excellent landscape architect here in our area, and he lives a few blocks from me. And I didn't know it was his house. I used to work closely with the Waterwise Landscape Tour with the water department, and I wanted him to be on the tour, so I knocked on his door one day, and if I'd known he was a landscape architect, I might not have had the courage to do that. But anyway, I photographed these in his yard, and that too is a part of my Sex in the Garden presentation. But here at the bathhouse, we were growing them, and one day, it was in September, and it was about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and I was just checking everything in the garden, and I walked over where these plants were, and I saw bees on the unopened blossoms, and they were prying the petals of the plant apart and crawling in. And here you can see the bee on the left is now coming out. And it might be because once she got in there, she saw another bee, so she turned around and came out. And that day, there was about 7 flowers that were going to blossom. And I looked at them and I could just see that each one of them had a bee down in the very base of the flower, kind of to get the pollen. And I thought these are AP bees, they're advanced placement. They're not waiting till dusk to come and get the pollen once the flower has opened. They're prying the flower open to get that pollen. So this has always been one of my favorite plants, but it is a narcotic. but I have never taken any, so I don't know what exactly it does to you, but there might be those of you who want to find out. Greg's mist flower. Oh God, if you know me, you know I'm a butterfly nut. And so I have a lot of this. It's one of my favorite flowers. This is sun to part shade, low water, deciduous. Gets about 3 feet tall, and it blooms usually from May through November, and it gets more blooms in the fall. And by the time the monarchs are coming through in October, it's covered in blossoms, and it's normally covered in male butterflies. And I was doing a lot of reading and research on butterflies before I found out why it's always male butterflies on this. But it has a, something in its nectar that has medicinal value. So when the male butterflies ingest that nectar, it gets in their sperm. So when they mate with the female, they're passing her this medicinal benefit. And when the butterflies are on this plant is a wonderful time to get up close looks because they are so intent on nectaring that they're not even aware you're there, and you can literally get right up in their face with your camera or now phone and take pictures. Um, this is a plant that spreads. And when I used to work the plant sale at the Discovery Garden, if somebody, was buying 6 of them or something, I'd say, um, where are you going to put those? And you say, well, I've got a 5 by 5 plot or something. And I'd say, no, then put 5 of them back. You only need one because they spread. That's the good news. That's the bad news. If you don't want yours to spread, you can put them in containers. But I pretty much let mine spread. I decide how much space I'm willing to let them have. And when they exceed that space, I just pull them up. They're pretty easy to uproot. And here we have a pair of queen butterflies. Queens are biological cousins of the monarchs. And this is a couple of male butterflies getting nectar from the Greg's mist. And on the monarchs and the queens, you can tell the males from the females by the black spot on the hind wing near the abdomen. And that indicates they're a male. And in the beginning of my butterfly research, I had a hard time remembering which gender had those. And then finally it dawned on me in a species of animal I'm more familiar with. In fact, in many other animal species, the round things are on the lower half of the male. So that made me remember which ones had those spots. Cedar sedge. I have to admit, I haven't grown this one either, but it's called cedar sedge because it's one of the few plants that will grow under a cedar tree. And cedar trees put out chemicals that prevent most plants from growing under them because they want to be in control of their domain. So this is part sun to shade because made to go under the cedar tree, although it will grow in other shady places. Very low water, deciduous. I can get up to 2 feet tall and 2 feet wide. It's a great color spot in your shade garden. The hummingbirds, bees, and butterflies all love it. And the good news, bad news is it reseeds freely. So if you want more of them, you're in great luck. If you don't, you'll probably be pulling up a lot of little plants. Rock rose. My advice is plant this Texas rock rose, the pink one. Don't plant the Brazilian rock rose, which looks similar but has a very pale pink flower with a maroon center. That one is really invasive. This one can spread, but it's kind of controllable and it doesn't spread prolifically. It's sun to part shade, low water, deciduous. Can get 2 feet tall and 3 feet wide. It's always, in my experience, been kind of a leggy plant as opposed to compact. The bees and butterflies love it, and you can cut it back a third in the late winter. Frankly, I usually cut it to the ground because once it's lost its leaves, it's not real attractive. Turk's cap. God, what's not to love about Turk's cap? It grows from full sun to full shade and blooms under all those conditions. You can get up to 6 feet tall and wide. It blooms June or July through November. The hummingbirds, the butterflies, and the bees love it. I always cut mine back in the winter, but I have learned to leave right after it drops its leaves, cut the canes, but leave them at least 4 feet tall because native bees and other insects could use them as their winter home. And then I cut it down to the ground in that February big cutback time, and then it starts blooming out. Sometimes the leaves don't even reappear till May, and I'm panicking. But so it's not one of your early plants that come to life. It's a summer and fall bloomer. But once you have this, the, you'll be inundated with hummingbirds. They love it. And here it's a little bit more of my sex in the garden talk. But on the left, we have a male ruby-throat hummingbird. And you can see that the forehead of the hummer is right up against the tallest part of the flower, which is where the sex organs are. And bees and butterflies, you'll see in a minute, don't touch that part of the flower when they're nectaring, but the hummingbird does. So it is the exclusive pollinator of Turk's cap. The nectar is way down at the bottom of the flower. So here on the right, we have a bumblebee being rear-ended by a honeybee. This was not a serious wreck to them. The bumblebee did not turn around and expose a single digit to the honeybee. They just took it in stride and they each went on. But the bumblebee, the native bee, has a very long proboscis, so it can sit on the outside of the flower and put its straw-like proboscis down in the flower to get the nectar. The honeybees have a short proboscis, so they have to climb inside the flower. And that's what I was actually trying to get a picture of, is a honeybee going in or out of a Turk's cap. But they did it so quickly, I never captured that image. And then I was just pure luck, right place, right time to get this picture. And here we have a monarch, which is considered one of the large butterflies. Other butterflies, I've only seen large butterflies on Turk's cap. And I'll admit, I don't see them as often as I see birds, hummingbirds and bees, but they do use it as a nectar source. Flame acanthus is another great hummingbird plant. It blooms about the same time as the Turk's cap. It's sun to part shade, very low water, deciduous. But unlike the Turk's cap, it will regrow and have leaves on old growth, whereas the Turk's cap only leaves out on new growth. Um, so I like mine. I like to control the size of mine, so I cut them knee level or lower in the winter. Some of them tend to flop over, and I have some between a retaining wall and a walkway. And so I put tomato cages around them, and after a few years, they learn to be upright plants. And now, every once in a while, there'll be one branch sticking out, and I'll just trim it off so that it doesn't impede my passage on that walkway. But here's a picture of a hummingbird on the flame acanthus. And I can see this plant out the window above my kitchen sink, but the fact of the matter was I was never actually observing it until that year I had the knee accident, and when I had the physical therapist coming to the house, she set me up there to do my exercises. So, and it was July and August, the hottest time of the year and the big time for hummingbirds. So it was, I always anticipated with happiness to do my exercises because I knew I'd always see hummingbirds. So it's a wonderful plant. I have this out that window and out the window by my kitchen table where I basically live, is where I see my Turk's cap. So I'm always seeing hummers. Buttonbush, I'll admit I've never grown this because it needs wet soil. And I know I would not remember to water it because when I took the Master Gardener class in 2005, we're all about water wise. I was not a lifetime gardener. So in 2005 was when I learned to garden. So I only bought water wise plants. But this is an outstanding plant and get to 12 feet tall. It's got these Sputnik looking flowers, and it'll be covered with bees and butterflies. So, if you've got a water feature or a CP part of your yard, this would be a great plant for there. Fall asters. God, I hope everybody has some that has sun to part shade. These end up being like a 3-foot round mound of lavender flowers, probably with bees or butterflies on every single one of them every October. They're just, October is a great month for butterflies. It's when the monarchs come through, but other butterflies are much more active in the weather that's a little cooler than the dead of summer, and this will just be covered in them. Mine, well, I guess all of them that I've ever seen do expand, so sometimes I'll just, again, decide how much space I'm going to give that plant and pull up everything outside that area. But you can cut it back in June to keep it compact. With our winter this year, mine's already about 3 feet tall, so I know I'm going to be cutting it back. But if you've got a spot of sun, this is something you've got to have. Another one you might not be familiar with, unless you hang out at the Discovery Garden, where they promote it greatly, as they should, is frostweed. This is a sun to shade plant. Usually it's sold as a shade plant, but mine's in full sun and it does fine, so I just added that in. It's low water, it's deciduous. It says it's a biennial, but I thought my same one was coming back on the same stem, but maybe it wasn't. But it does put out little pups and seedlings, so you always have some to give away. It blooms primarily August through November, and it will be covered in bees and butterflies. And I think it's very important that you trim it back like in June because you don't want it to get 7 feet tall because then you can't observe the butterflies. And before I learned to cut it back, I actually put out a ladder and went up the ladder so I could take pictures of the butterflies at the top of the plant where the blooms were. I don't do that anymore. But This is very important to the migrating monarchs because it's like Red Bull for them. It's full, their nectar is full of energy. And you know, those monarchs need all the energy they can get to fly down to those mountain areas in Mexico, just west of Mexico City, and to survive through the winter. The successful migrators do not have to eat or drink all winter. So this is a great plant for them to be able to nectar on as they go south. And the reason it's frostweed is because of this unique display it has after a freeze. And in the left picture, you can see mine is up against a fence, and you can see along the stems where the white has come out overnight, and here's a close-up of it. It kind of looks like a rounded ribbon. And I usually, when I get up in the morning, I'll turn on the TV, and you know how those morning TV shows are? You can't go 5 minutes without a weather report. And they'll say, well, it got down to 26 tonight. And then I'll walk in my kitchen where I can look out my window and see this plant, and I'll see if it froze in my yard. Because if it did, I'll have this interesting display. And if I don't, I know that it probably didn't get to 32 in that particular spot, which is protected by a fence on the north side. But so on this one, when it turns ugly after the frost and all the leaves die, leave it up for a while so you can observe this. So what blooms in December? Oh, you know, the trees just get dazzling and nobody's looking at your plants. At this point in my program, I usually ask if there are any questions. Since we can't handle them in this format, if you have any questions, feel free to email me. Here's my email address. And I have to say, it's been fun being the Master Gardener guinea pig for new digital technologies. And I hope you don't mind that my cat joined in the program. Stay well and remember to distance. And happy gardening.
Hi, I'm Janet Smith. I'm class of 2005 of the Dallas County Master Gardeners. And here we are in my front yard, which I refer to as the berm because that's what it is. It was built with soil that was removed from my backyard because I'm at the bottom of the hill and I had a drainage issue. And here is the first plant I want to talk about, four-nerve daisies. I had always wanted to have a year-round bloom, and these are the plants that helped me accomplish that, because they pretty well bloom all year officially from February to November, but you know, there's still some flowers in those other months. They're totally easy to grow. They have, I don't fertilize them. I don't use any fertilizer or pesticides at all. As you can see, they're about knee-high, maybe a little lower because they are in a raised bed. They need sun to part shade. They are evergreen, and they have this kind of clump grass foliage. And they're sort of like those airplane plants we all had back in the 70s that I know some of you weren't born yet, but others of us remember the 70s. Or maybe not. But we always had airplane plants hanging in those macrame plant hangers. And so these, the clumps are attached. So if you dig up one, you're probably going to get four. And that's, to me, that's a great deal. I have been so lucky because with nothing that I did, they jumped over the sidewalk and came over here to the parkway. All of these are volunteers. I have never done anything ice for these flowers. I have never watered these. If I'm really bored and I want to do some gardening, one thing I can do is come through and get it. Other than that, I just totally ignore them. And they keep cropping up more and more of them. Now there's well over 100 of them. I can't guarantee that would work for everybody because they have not spread in my backyard and they have not spread at the bathhouse garden. But here they are.
Hi everybody. Well, I hope you enjoyed our program. So happy that we could bring it to you. I just want to say, please stay safe, please stay healthy, and as usual, we can never thank you enough. So I just want to show you my front yard, and so you can see just a garden. Makes us all much more happier. Thank you. Bye-bye. Take care.